Tonight, New South Wales refuses to budge. State authorities stand by their cautious approach to relaxing restrictions. Good evening, I'm Jeremy Fernandez. This is ABC News. Another death at Newmarch House, but authorities say it isn't coronavirus related. The family disagrees.
So, congratulations, sir.
Auctions get back the human touch, so how will the market respond? And the humble jigsaw puzzle makes an isolation-inspired comeback.
I find the puzzle boom to be bad for me personally, because I would really like to buy some more and they're sold out everywhere.
Welcome to the program. The state government's refusing to be rushed into revealing when New South Wales will begin to follow National Cabinet's roadmap to easing COVID-19 restrictions. The state's health minister says more time is needed because of the size of the New South Wales population and the number of coronavirus infections. Some relaxation is already happening here though. Shops selling non-essential goods have begun reopening their doors, and with that came the crowds and a stark illustration of just how challenging maintaining physical distancing is going to be.
They tried to keep their distance and excitement in check.
No more online shopping, so I can physically see the clothing now.
Finally, so I can buy a Mother's Day present for myself.
But at Myers reopening, an attempt to order
Can I just please get you to line up to the right-hand side?
created chaos.
Do you think this is adequate social distance?
No, not at the moment.
Are you happy with how this is going?
I was, but not now.
Line up, please. Look at people not line up properly. They should prepare before they open the shop. They let the people come together and they tell them give a distance. Not right.
While the shops may be filling, the beer taps are still dry.
All right, so Jesse, this is the rooftop. You know, normally on a Saturday night we'd have 250 people plus on here. So to have 10 people is ridiculous.
That's the cap on the number of patrons allowed in Queensland pubs when they reopen next week. Warren Livingston is confident his Sydney venue could safely accommodate many more.
You know, gyms, sweaty gyms with 30 people sharing the same equipment, they're going to be opening soon. The NRL are playing in 3 weeks, and pubs, no idea.
For the venues that saw the announcement yesterday about the roadmap out of this for Australians, they really find it as a dead end. It's like a Clayton's reopening, the reopening you have when you're not having a reopening.
That reopening has been planned by the National Cabinet for July or thereabouts, whenever we reach stage 3 of the easing of restrictions. But New South Wales hasn't yet decided what it will do.
Let us do our job today. Let us think about it possibly tomorrow, and we'll see.
One country, one direction, different speeds.
Soraya Ganakti is still anxious about the virus. Even when her restaurant is allowed up to 10 diners, she says she'll set up just one table.
Yeah, obviously we're struggling. We're down at least 60-65%. But what can we do?
Others are changing the way they work permanently.
We're going to cut half of the window, so basically what we're going to do is you could just order everything from the front without having to feel that you need to go inside the store.
Life still feeling very far from business as usual. Jessie Dorset, ABC News, Sydney.
Another resident of Newmarch House has died after the outbreak of coronavirus there. Health officials say the 92-year-old contracted COVID-19 at the aged care home but had recovered and then died yesterday of other illnesses. Her family says she never fully recovered from her confinement and isolation after catching the virus.
92-year-old Faye Rendoth was a devoted wife, mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. Her life was cut short, according to her family, because of coronavirus. I can tell you that my grandmother was fairly well for a 92-year-old before she was diagnosed with COVID. We all thought she had it in her to make 100. Faye Rendoth contracted the virus 3 weeks ago, one of 37 residents of Newmarch House to test positive.
We understand that the person had COVID, had recovered, had other illnesses and was elderly and had died the doctor does not believe directly related to COVID.
Her death will not be counted among the COVID-19 toll, but Ms Rendoth's granddaughter says the impact of the virus was profound. It was the confinement in her room and the byproduct of COVID-19 of social physical isolation that had detrimental impacts on her health and led to her passing. If she hadn't contracted COVID-19 and been isolated, she'd be with us today.
Whenever you have an infection and you have other conditions, that of course can influence your general body stamina and ability to fight off and recover.
A record 13,692 tests were carried out in New South Wales in the past 24 hours. Only 5 new cases were recorded.
The only way we will know how this virus is behaving through our community is to have people coming forward for testing with the slightest itch in their throat, the slightest feeling of sickness, the slightest temperature. Come forward.
The state's total number of cases now stands at 3,051. Antoinette Collins, ABC News, Sydney.
There's been a return to some normality for the property market today, with buyers allowed to return to on-site auctions. The indications are that it's given an immediate boost to sellers, with early clearance rates up significantly from last week to around 70%. Liv Casbin has this report.
They came early and in their droves.
It's a nice sunny day, it's beautiful to be out, yeah.
A chance to be outside, but with strict rules in place.
Please ensure you are keeping your distance.
This block of units in Western Sydney was meant to go under the hammer on Wednesday. That was delayed to allow the auction to move on site.
There's no doubt at all that bringing it back on site has been a huge benefit for us.
And for the vendor too, with the final price more than $1 million above expectations.
Congratulations, $3,855,000.
During the peak of COVID-19 restrictions, clearance rates dropped to around 30%, partly because of the number of properties being withdrawn. Online auctions also had an impact.
The online process at times made them feel a little bit uncomfortable.
In Sydney South, the buyers were also out.
And it was a nice, short, sharp 3-week campaign. A lot of buyer inquiries, a lot of inspections.
At $1,060,000 holds it. So, congratulations, sir.
One happy family of first home buyers.
We've got a mortgage now, so life's got to get going.
We're nervous but excited.
Analysts say that since COVID-19 restrictions have been put in place, that more than half of Sydney's properties listed for auction have been withdrawn. That's had a dramatic impact on clearance rates. But the early evidence is that since a return to on-site auctions, that's all changing.
With the lifting of the ban on-site auctions in New South Wales, it's likely that we're going to see clearance rates remain strong and if not even strengthen moving forwards.
The early signs are that the lifting of restrictions has been a positive one for the market.
Positive for some, but not for everyone.
It's good to be back, but the market's too hot for us.
Liv Casbin, ABC News, Sydney.
Experts are warning of a surge in mental illness because of the pandemic. They say there needs to be better support for the thousands of people who are still in forced isolation. There have been a number of incidents involving travellers in hotels, including a Queensland man who says he wasn't able to get help despite suffering severe panic attacks. Nino Bucci reports.
Weeks in isolation and 2 nights without sleep.
And I've literally spent 9 hours at what is supposed to be a medical hotel, shaking, crying, being in total panic, having to call reception to be told that there is nothing they can do.
In early April, Gilles Fisher went into a Sydney hotel after an overseas cruise where he was diagnosed with COVID-19. 20 days in, the confinement and conflicting information about when he could leave sparked severe panic attacks and insomnia.
I'm here with a heart issue, like spikes in my chest and arms, and no one is going to do anything.
He says no mental health support was available during the attacks, with a 3-day wait to speak to a psychologist.
When I started feeling very anxious, and this was getting worse and worse, I felt that there was no clear process, but no one to actually manage my anxiety that was increasing.
He's not alone. A GP was surprised to find there was also no clear mental health protocols at the hotel she oversaw in Perth.
Every call, bar maybe a few, were to do with something to do with they felt anxious, they felt stressed, they felt victimised.
Experts say consistent and proactive support is crucial because confinement puts people at high risk of mental health problems.
We have to go on the front foot here and go to people. So when they're in crisis, when they're seeking help, not waiting for them to find their way through the maze.
Mental health care in quarantine is set to continue to be in the spotlight in coming months. An inquest will be held into a suspected suicide at a Melbourne hotel. The Victorian Department of Health has apologised to a woman who was not allowed home after suffering a miscarriage. And the West Australian Ombudsman has received complaints about a veteran's treatment. Sydney Local Health declined to comment on Gilles' case, but says there are protocols in place to provide appropriate mental health support to those in quarantine. Gilles has since received an apology, but he still wants better care for others.
Having an overall kind of process and guideline would make sure that everyone is treated the same way.
A message for those looking after thousands of others still in quarantine. Nino Bucci, ABC News, Melbourne.
China has kicked out a second Australian journalist in just 4 months as a crackdown on foreign media intensifies. The veteran New York Times reporter Chris Buckley spent 76 days locked down in Wuhan, and he's now had to leave the country after his visa wasn't renewed. The media is now turning into an increasingly bitter stage for the rivalry between China and the US. China correspondent Bill Birtles reports from Beijing.
After 24 years in China, most of it in Beijing, Chris Buckley knows what it's like to be watched. But even he was surprised that an interview with the ABC would prompt at least 3 men to follow and film us from a distance.
It's become a much tougher, more challenging place to report. It's become more controlled, more centralised, more authoritarian.
Last year, with a colleague, he published the biggest leak of Chinese government documents in decades, detailing the extremely coercive measures authorities used to lock up ethnic minority Muslims in re-education centres. More recently, he spent 76 days under lockdown in Wuhan, risking his health and getting stories from the original viral epicentre, even as authorities refused to renew his press card.
You could see the flux of emotions that people had to live through, the fear that they had to live through.
China's foreign ministry says it's simply a case of his visa running out while he was stuck in Wuhan, and he's welcome to reapply from abroad in future.
Don't overthink it. The laws and regulations are the laws and regulations.
In total, 19 foreign reporters, all working for US media, have been kicked out or haven't had their visas renewed in the past 12 months.
Many of the reporters were expelled in retaliation for the US capping the number of visas for Chinese state media workers in America. But it's no coincidence the journalists Beijing ousted include investigative reporters who have done the most to show what's really going on here.
CGTN. As censorship mutes foreign voices in China, China's government media bureaus are expanding abroad.
If you're going to turn that interflow between China and the rest of the world off, it's dangerous for both sides.
And with much of the world still in the grip of the pandemic, it's an erosion of press freedoms that'll be felt more than ever. Bill Birtles, ABC News, Beijing.
Unemployment in the US has just reached levels not seen since the Great Depression. The jobless rate for April rose to 14.7%, a figure that's likely to keep growing.
I would expect the numbers for May will be difficult. I expect that.
The White House is hoping the easing of lockdown restrictions will bring jobs back. Economists say around a quarter of the positions that were cut because of the pandemic could be lost permanently. As coronavirus tears across the United States, Native American tribal leaders are calling out for help, saying their people are in crisis. The country's largest Indian reservation, the Navajo Nation, which is about the size of Tasmania, has the 3rd highest infection rate per capita in the US. But they only have a fraction of the resources. North America correspondent James Glenday has this report.
On the Navajo Nation in Arizona, remote communities are mourning as some of their best and brightest, like 28-year-old Valentina Blackhorse, are killed by COVID-19.
So I honestly thought she was going to get better. You know, she was just basically ripped away from us.
Valentina wanted to one day become president of her people. Instead, her coronavirus symptoms were worsened by rheumatoid arthritis, and this week her sister and 18-month-old daughter laid her to rest.
Well, I don't think I'll ever come to terms of her passing, but I know one day I'm going to have to.
The Navajo Reservation stretches across 71,000 square kilometres, but its 300,000 tribal members only have 20 permanent ICU beds. Dr. Sri Shamasunda has flown in to help.
So mostly the headaches bothering you? Yeah. No, any blurry vision?
But his team can only do so much. Many patients have other diseases, homes are overcrowded, and 30% don't have access to running water.
If you don't have running water, how are you going to make sure that your level of cleanliness day in, day out is the level that doesn't infect the people around you?
Lockdowns and curfews on the reservation seem to be slowing the spread, but not enough. In previous pandemics, Native Americans have died at higher rates than the general population.
If you look back over the last 120, 30 years, it's been 4 times the national average.
On Navajo, at least 88 people have been killed by the virus and more than 2,700 have contracted it so far. Tribal leaders say they feel forgotten and claim America's first citizens have once again been put last. James Glenday, ABC News.
The pandemic hasn't stopped celebrations marking the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe. In Britain, residents stayed within lockdown rules to recreate the street parties which broke out when the Allies defeated Nazi forces in 1945. The Queen recalled greeting jubilant Britons with her father, King George VI. She also reflected on the new challenges the nation is facing.
When I look at our country today and see what we are willing to do to protect and support one another, I say with pride that we are still a nation those brave soldiers, sailors and airmen would recognise and admire.
In Berlin, there was a more sombre ceremony. The German president used the occasion to call for European solidarity during the pandemic. Customer service staff have become regarded as essential workers in the era of COVID-19. They're working in an increasingly stressful environment, adapting to strict new hygiene rules and often dealing with angry customers. And it's taking a toll. Australia's biggest workplace insurer is predicting a shockwave of anxiety and trauma among millions of employees.
Amanda French has been packing bags for her customers for 15 years.
Now that the customers have to pack their own bags, especially the elderly, they tend to panic a bit because they're a lot slower. So we just try to talk to them and reassure them that it's okay.
She says her customers have been more frustrated lately, and that stress is taking a toll.
If you get an anxious customer and they come in and they're not very polite, that plays on your mind and you take it home with you as well.
Researchers say the COVID crisis has brought significant risks to frontline workers.
When you add customer incivility with fear, then you start to get a lot of aggression that is not only towards the worker, but you also have workers that become really fearful of their own safety.
Professor Caroline Howe says around 20% of the population normally suffer mental distress. That level has skyrocketed.
What we've already found is that the experience of distress just from the general population is already sitting at 70%.
For managers who want to improve their work environment, researchers say clear social distancing policies and good communication are paramount.
Strong leadership is the absolute key in being able to navigate through an epidemic or a pandemic situation.
Workers are doing their bit too.
If I see somebody that's more frustrated than usual, I just try to be extra nice to them and make a point of asking how their day is.
A touch of empathy goes a long way in a crisis. Alison Chow, ABC News, Sydney.
The south coast town of Eden has worked hard and spent big in recent years to become a destination for cruise ships. But the seismic effects of bushfires and coronavirus have cast a long shadow over its future. Some businesses are worried they might never recover.
When a cruise ship is in town, Eric Wolski always expects a rush of customers in his antique store.
We can do on a cruise day what we would normally do in sales for a whole week. So from a financial perspective, it's very, very positive.
But 14 cruises scheduled to dock in Eden have been cancelled this year, first because of bushfires, now coronavirus.
We've basically lost everything that would be squirreled away to cover you for that quiet time. So it's going to have a huge impact, probably for at least the next 6 months to try and recover.
The town has been positioning itself as a cruising destination with a new $44 million wharf opening late last year. Businesses were working towards a recovery in tourism after the fires when COVID-19 struck.
We never want to relive 2020. It's been a horrible year.
This community has put their heart and soul into receiving and welcoming cruise ships. So when things go awry and they're cancelled, it's heart-wrenching.
Each cruise season is worth between $6 and $8 million to the local economy. After a devastating end to the cruise ship season, there's hope that the industry will be able to bounce back, and with it, Eden's tourism sector.
Next season, we're not 100% sure what it will look like, but domestic itineraries will be the first to return, and that puts Eden in a really strong position.
We really need the ships to come back. We've built it, it's here, it's all ready for them to come back. We just need them to come back, and they will.
We've backed the right horse. Might just take a little bit longer to get there.
A gamble many are banking on. Claire Wheaton, ABC News, Eden.
There are calls for rugby league to scrap its 2-referee system permanently as the code considers reverting to one on-field official to cut costs. The proposal is being considered by the NRL's Project Apollo, the body set up to plan the league's return to the field. And it has the backing of the sport's boss, Peter Fernandez.
Mick Stone wasn't afraid to make the tough calls when he was a referee. He once sent off Bulldogs legend Peter Kelly after just 16 seconds.
That was your job. You just made the call. You didn't dwell on it. You make the call and you moved on.
Now Stone's calling for the NRL to get rid of its 2-referee system permanently, with the code considering going back to just one official this season.
The ability to make tough, immediate decisions has gone out of refereeing over recent years.
Case in point, the 2018 grand final.
There's a kick involved here. I know what he wanted to do. He wanted to point to the shed and say, get off, your day's finished.
The 2-referee system, which was introduced in 2009 to clean up the ruck, has its supporters.
Any rule change that you make on the ruck will have the biggest significant change in our game.
But Stone argues less referees will improve performance.
With only 8 referees in first grade, it'll be far easier to replace someone who was underperforming.
The reason the NRL is considering going back to one referee is so it can save money by not employing casual staff like touch judges. It wants the 20 full-time referees already on its books to cover those roles when the season resumes. Michael Rennie, ABC News.
Working groups are being formed to discuss how Australian stadiums might safely cater for spectators when they're allowed back to watch live sport. It's looking promising for fans, with many leagues now starting to resume behind closed doors.
Ninkovic scores!
A day at the footy is usually a thrill.
A season of outstanding performance.
Fans love supporting their team in person because of the atmosphere, the socialising and the on-field drama.
Cue delirium amongst the Sky Blue Hawks.
For Sydney FC supporters, Sam Vartuli and his son Max, going to the game has become a tradition.
Football's been the real only constant in my life, and this is the first time that it's disappeared. It's really that holistic side of the game that's what we're craving.
It's a common feeling. And sports-starved fans have been consuming record numbers of digital content.
We've actually seen over 50% increase in our web and app traffic and our audience engagement across social compared to our off-season numbers. It just shows that everybody's dying for football to come back.
When sport does return, fans should also be prepared for a different stadium feel. Professor David Shilbury is an expert on sports management.
Organisations are going to need to be carefully following the medical advice and medical direction. People are going to have to sit in 2 or 3 seats apart, and that'll present an interesting environment.
Well, the grandstand experience might be a little bit more lonelier than usual once gates finally do open for supporters. There is some good news. There's going to be no shortage of sport to watch come the end of the year. A T20 Cricket World Cup, National Rugby League and AFL Grand Final, A-League, NBL, Melbourne Cup, French Open, US Masters and the Bathurst 1000 are all now scheduled in October and November. A once-in-a-lifetime sporting feast is just around the corner. Patrick Galloway, ABC News.
From binge watching to home renovations, Australians are finding different ways to pass the time in isolation. And jigsaw puzzles are going through one of the biggest surges in popularity. So much so, retailers are struggling to keep up with demand. Here's arts reporter Lisa Skerritt.
The click is so satisfying.
The mindfulness, I find it really therapeutic.
And then when you've completed the whole thing, you get this great sense of accomplishment.
Australians are rediscovering their love for the humble jigsaw puzzle. In the past 30 days, we've Googled them more than any other country. Even the Prime Minister is a fan.
I can assure you over the next few months we're going to consider those jigsaw puzzles absolutely essential.
The increased demand has led to many products selling out. For puzzle business owners, it's a welcome development.
Christmas would normally be absolutely our biggest time of the year. What we're selling at the moment is bigger than Christmas.
But for some puzzle fans, their popularity has a downside. I find the puzzle boom to be bad for me personally, because I would really like to buy some more and they're sold out everywhere. With months of practice under people's belts, the standard will be high at Australia's first national jigsaw puzzle competition, due to take place in Melbourne this November. What are the traits of a champion jigsaw puzzler?
Fast hands. You've definitely got to break that puzzle down into manageable portions to tackle it.
While they may require a level of skill and patience that not all of us have, it would seem these little cardboard shapes are undergoing a kind of cultural makeover.
There are a lot of very cool people who have come out saying that they love jigsaw puzzles. Hugh Jackman loves jigsaw puzzles and he is most certainly cool.
Look, it moves, it's like it's alive.
But with restrictions soon to ease around the country, only time will tell if these essential items will keep their newfound cool. Lisa Skerritt, ABC News.
Let's take a look at the weather now. There's been a bit of rainfall today about the state's east. Not in Sydney though, it was mostly sunny with increasing cloud today, down to 17 degrees overnight before a top of 27. Overnight temperatures were generally 2 to 6 degrees above the average for May, and rainfall was largely confined to the ranges and slopes, with the heaviest falls in the north. Daytime temperatures were also above average, except for the state's southwest due to the passage of a cold front. That same frontal system has brought showers to Hobart, Melbourne and Canberra today. It's been dry though in the other capital cities. The front over the nation's southeast is combining with a trough that's resulting in storms in parts of the state. A warning is current for severe thunderstorms with damaging winds in the southern tablelands. As the front passes through the state overnight, it'll bring snow to parts of Tasmania, Victoria and the New South Wales Southern Highlands. The conditions will ease tomorrow, though we will see the chilly winds persist. A quick look at the forecast for the major centres tomorrow. Showers are expected in Adelaide and possibly Melbourne. It'll be mostly sunny in Canberra and Darwin and partly cloudy in Hobart. The skies turn mostly sunny in northeastern New South Wales tomorrow. There's a chance of a few lingering showers or storms early in the day down to the mid-north coast. On the water, winds will be west to southwesterly and fresh at times, seas to 3 metres. We can expect clear skies in the southeast with only a slight chance of showers near the Victorian border. Winds will be fresh to strong on the coast and generally west to southwesterly with the passing cold front. There's a gale warning current for the Eden coast and strong winds in the remainder right up to Coffs Harbour. There'll be a morning shower or two about the southern Alps and southwest slopes, falling as snow above 900 metres. It'll be dry and sunny though elsewhere. In Sydney, winds will also turn west to southwesterly overnight, rising up to 30 knots, seas rising 2 to 3 metres and then easing in the afternoon. There's a medium chance of showers tonight, but the skies clear again tomorrow after an overnight low of 11. Tomorrow's tops in the high teens. It'll get to 19 in the city, 18 in Penrith. It'll stay sunny until midweek when the cloud starts building up again and we see a chance of light showers returning in the second half of the week. Daytime temperatures staying in the high teens to low 20s. And that is the very latest from the ABC News team. Thanks for your company. From all of us, enjoy the rest of your evening.